bombing the Gaza Strip into dust, as senior Israeli officials have promised, will neither eliminate Hamas as a political group nor its following among Palestinians around the world.
And joining us now is somebody who knows all about things from the other side. Nour Odeh is a Palestinian analyst and a commentator and a writer based in the West Bank city of Ramallah. And she's also a former spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority. Nour, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, how do you see any way out of this? We've just heard from Yossi there. I mean, in your experience and looking at what's happening, how do both sides get out of this now?
Well, let me first start because I think I owe your listeners that much by saying that I am appalled that Yossi Beilin repeated an unfounded allegation about the beheading of babies. This is a lie, a fabrication that has been proven to be such, and it is just unacceptable for him to repeat it for the sake of incitement or for the sake of convincing your listeners that his position.
But no, could we just establish?
I find it objectionable that you did not push back on that because this is something that is no longer in dispute.
Would you accept that many children and indeed infants have been killed? We have seen pictures of that.
I accept that this was a large attack. I accept that there were a lot of casualties. I do not have the numbers or the breakdowns, but to allege that babies were beheaded in order to peddle.
Okay. Well, look. To be honest, Nour. I think a lot of people are just sickened by the level of violence which took place with men, women, children.
You do not need to introduce.
You've made your point now. You have made your point. If children are being killed, whether they're Palestinian children or Israeli children, I think we can both agree that that is an absolute travesty. Now, you have made your point. Can we move on now to? You've got a lot of experience about what's happening with the Palestinian people. We've got a short amount of time with you. Can I move on to ask you about some questions? What do you think is going to happen next? Is there any chance of any kind of solution? Where do you see this ending? What's the end game here?
Well, look, I'll tell you two things about that. War only plants the seeds of the next war, and I find it disheartening to hear people arguing that the only way out of this is by bombing Gaza some more. Hamas does not only exist in Gaza. Bombing the Gaza Strip into dust, as senior Israeli officials have promised, will neither eliminate Hamas as a political group nor its following among Palestinians around the world. That is not the way forward. And I think the only way that Israelis will understand that all of this warmongering, all of this cheerleading that is happening around their war against Gaza is not going to get them any closer to actually feeling more secure is after the dust settles. When the Americans and the British and everybody else leaves, and they're left with the indisputable truth that Palestinians aren't going anywhere. So it's not just about Hamas. All these thousands of people who have been left homeless, more than 30% of homes in Gaza have been leveled, entire neighborhoods. Do you think all these people will be in the mood to make friends?
Of course not.
And people like me find war objectionable.
I think pretty much all of us find the idea of what's happening absolutely objectionable. I'm from a Muslim background myself. It's sickening to see what is happening. And what do you think is going on with the people of Palestine at the moment, Nour? I mean, we have lots of speculation about how much support there is for Hamas, but of course there's quite a lot of division as well, because there's Fatah, there's Hamas. We have the leader of Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas, talking today. Will there be any sort of uniting of forces in terms of who represents the Palestinian people. Do you think there's any chance of that happening? Because there's a big split between the West Bank and, of course, the Gaza Strip.
Well, that's a good question. And I think really the split is not just between Gaza and the West Bank. They're physically separated and now, under different control. But I think that more importantly, the Palestinian system itself is fractured. And anybody who thinks that it can be repaired without having all of the Palestinian components participating is fooling themselves. The Palestinians as a people are bigger than all of their factions put together, and there are about 17 of them. It's not just Fatah and Hamas. And quite frankly, before this war, opinion poll among Palestinians showed that the majority were fed up with everybody because nobody was delivering. Armed resistance wasn't delivering. Popular resistance and diplomatic efforts weren't delivering freedom. There was a dead-end reality in light of everything. And despite all of that, you had a right-wing Israeli government that was breaking records left and right of the number of Palestinian children killed and homes demolished and kids detained. And that's before October 7th. That's in the West Bank, where none of that is supposed to be happening. So there is a lot of anger, and Palestinians will have time to judge their leaders and their factions. And I think that judgment day will come once the war is done, not now. And I think the judgment will be extremely harsh for everybody.
And I think the same is true on the Israeli side as well. I mean, a huge amount of anger and dissatisfaction with Netanyahu. We just heard from Yossi Beilin saying that he didn't think that that government would survive after the war finishes. Final question to you, Nour. One proposition that has been put to me is we talk about a two-state solution. Maybe it is a three-state solution given you have this split between the West Bank and Gaza. What do you think about that?
I think that's an extremely dangerous proposition. I think it is based on the idea that if you appease Israel, that if you give it what it wants, then it will give the Palestinians some measure of autonomy. What the Palestinian people want is self-determination, and they want that as a united political entity. The West Bank and Gaza are separated physically because Israel violated the partition resolution and took more land than it should. That doesn't mean that the West Bank and Gaza are not one political entity, that the same Palestinian people who live in Gaza live in the West Bank. They are united by identity, by bloodline, by language, and by aspiration. Okay. And to divide them means that you're shattering the Palestinian cause. Okay. I find it very dangerous, and I know it will not work. It will not pass. Palestinians want a way out to freedom. They want to be released from the Israeli captivity they've been held in for over half a century. And in order for us to have any hope, I think we need to see a departure from the international complacency and the repeat of tried and failed formulas of appeasing international law violations instead of holding people accountable and talking about ending the occupation rather than managing it.